Hey, this is Rue, and this video is going to be a quick and easy 11-step guide to get some HRE achievements starting as Iceland. Here's a list of those achievements, and following this strategy should let you get at least 6. I know what you're thinking. Why do this as Iceland? Wouldn't starting as a powerful HRE member like Austria, Bohemia, or Brandenburg make more sense? My answer would be, it depends. If you value starting diplomacy, economic and military power, strong national ideas, overpowered mission trees, ease of expansion, and your own sanity, those nations are the way to go. But they can't compete with Iceland in the areas that really matter. First, Iceland is one of the few nations that starts the game with harpoon-equipped troops. Most everybody else is using played-out stuff like swords and spears. Harpoons will catch enemy soldiers off guard and give our troops a significant range advantage in combat. Second, we have a geographic advantage. To take our capital, our enemies will have to sail across the treacherous North Sea and land troops in Iceland, where we'll be waiting for them. As you'll see, this will let us defeat enemies many times our size. Third, Iceland has unique national ideas for an HRE run. I don't think any of the starting HRE princes get a free colonist or can use explorers at game start. This is a huge advantage, as is minus 20% shipbuilding time and plus 15% light ship combat ability. You can't buy bonuses like these. Fourth, and this is more subjective, but the Icelandic flag and map color are pretty great. This might not matter to sweaty min-maxers, but on this channel we believe in the rule of cool, at least most of the time. Lastly, and probably most importantly, playing as a smaller tag like Iceland will give us the element of surprise. The AI expects Austria to have a good game and usually throws strong rivals at them like France and the Ottomans. Playing as Iceland, powerful nations won't view us as a threat and will probably leave us alone all game. One last thing to note, in my example run I'm not going to use alliances. This isn't required for this strategy, but for a strong nation like Iceland, allies would just hold us back, taking our gold and manpower and calling us into their pointless wars. The lives of our soldiers are just too precious for that. Enough theory crafting, let's get into it. I like to keep the pace up for these edited videos, but if there's any part of the run you want to see in excruciatingly slow detail, this whole run was done live here on YouTube, and I'll have all the VODs linked in a playlist below. I'm going to break this video into a series of steps, and step 1 is obviously release and independence. We release ourselves from Norway, which gives us an automatic 5-year truce. Another advantage of this strategy, we start the game with 100% crown land, which is nice. This will be our starting estate setup, but you can change these as needed for your playstyle. Typically, you have to wait a few years for the truce with Norway to end, and there's not a lot to do during this time other than improve relations with Austria, which is important. In this run, we were surprised with a really early Swedish independence war. Sweden has great diplo here, Burgundy, England, Poland, and Lithuania, so this war is a foregone conclusion. Also note that England gave Maine to France, which is almost always the right choice for an AI England and bad news for AI France. We're called to this war, but we don't really care what happens, so it's time to speed 5 and watch Denmark get rolled up like a Persian rug. The English land on us and take our capital in February of 1447, which is unfortunate but unavoidable. The eventual peace deal sees Sweden getting their independence and a bunch of land from both Denmark and Norway. Now that we're at peace, it's time to build some troops. For this strategy, you'll need an army of about 10k. I use a mix of 6,000 regular troops and 4,000 from free company mercenaries. I'm also going to work on building 4 transports. We declare our own independence war in July of 1450, and the idea here is to bait Denmark or one of their allies to land troops in Iceland. You have to play a careful game here with the maintenance slider. Too high and they'll never land, but too low and you may not win the fight when they do. You might be wondering how we're affording all this, and the answer is probably the biggest Icelandic advantage of all. We're centuries ahead of the curve in embracing modern monetary theory, and we're no longer constrained by the normal rules of debt and economics. It takes a while, but Denmark finally sends troops in February of 1455, and it's time to turn up army maintenance and meet them in eastern Iceland. Between landing and terrain, Denmark has a -3 to rolls here, which lets us take a nice victory with +11 war score. We chase them back and forth across Iceland a couple times before stack wiping them for another 1.5 war score. If you want to be greedy, you can continue this war for more land or money, but I end it here in July, getting our independence and 1 province in southern Denmark. It's on to step 2, HRE and early expansion. We core and stay at our new province and move our capital in October of 1457. We kept relations with Austria high, and they let us join the HRE a few days later. If you've seen my previous runs, you know what's coming next. It's time to become the jackals of the HRE, eating up any prince we can and growing our power base in northern Germany. First up is Dithmarschen in June of 1460, followed by Hamburg and a separate peace in April of 1465. Austria loses the emperorship to Cleves fairly early, and for some reason imperial authority is at just 2 and barely increasing. Ideally, in a run like this, Austria or whoever's emperor manages to pass at least a couple reforms before the Reformation. You'll see how that turns out for us. We end a Lubeck war with money and their humiliation in November of 1466. We show strength against Lunenburg 2 years later. These wars can be useful to get monarch points in the early game while waiting for AE to tick down. We separate peace Denmark in April of 1474, humiliating them, taking money, and most importantly, boxing out Sweden from taking land. We end the main war against Ferdinand a year later, annexing all 4 of their provinces. The emperorship changes hands again in April of 1481, going to Nassau, which has just 6,000 troops. These weak emperors aren't even able to protect the empire from external threats, let alone pass reforms. We sneak in another humiliation war, this time against Lubeck, which we finished in September, getting us some additional power projection and monarch points. We get a nice event in November of 1488, the English Age of Iceland, giving us 200 ducats and 10 development. We humiliate Volgast, another rival, in a separate peace in April of 1490, and then finish the main war against Denmark in January, taking 7 provinces. We show strength against Brandenburg 4.5 years later. In April of 1496, we found our first colony, honoring our Viking heritage by returning to the eastern shores of Newfoundland. A year later, we kick off our Icelandic Golden Age, which I like to time with filling out early idea groups. Lubeck is next on the block, and we fully annex them in December of 1500. Our colony in Newfoundland becomes self-sustaining in March of 1506, and for our next we move further down the American coast into what is now North Carolina. If you've seen my other Iceland run, you probably know the idea here, but if you haven't, don't worry, this will make sense eventually. At this point, Denmark is just a North German OPM, and we put them out of their misery in July of 1506. To keep the pace up, I haven't been showing many battles, but I have to show this one. We're about to capture a Swedish border fort, but we get completely outplayed by the AI, and not for the last time. Sweden spawns an 18k stack of religious rebels, which we defeat, and we even get the sack event, which is great. What's less great are the 34,000 angry Swedes marching towards our depleted forces. On paper, we have a morale and terrain advantage here, but we roll terribly and our troops are sent packing. Still, we may have lost the battle, but we win the war, and we separate peace Sweden in January of 1512, taking a couple North Atlantic islands, 1 Danish province, and a bunch of gold. We end the main war against Oldenburg a month later, taking their only province. We take advantage of the weakness of the emperor to attack the free city of Bremen directly in August of 1514, and we annex it after a war of about 2.5 years. We've established a decent power base in northern Germany, and will continue to expand, but it's time for step 3 of our strategy, and that's to let the HRE get absolutely wrecked by the Protestant Reformation. We're in the middle of a humiliation war with Bohemia when the Reformation fires in May of 1517, but the location is strange. In Sealy, in the northwestern corner of the Balkans. This is not good. It's going to be very difficult for us to get rid of this center of Reformation, and things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. If you're curious how the AI emperors have done so far, in one of the best times of the game to build imperial authority and pass reforms, here's a look. After 73 years, they've managed to pass 0 reforms and accumulate a grand total of 0.01 IA. This run is turned into something like an HRE reclamation project, and a lesser nation might throw in the towel, but not Iceland. We finish our war against Bohemia, grabbing some more monarch points. In October of 1517, Poland inherits Lithuania, forming the PLC. So far, they've been friendly towards us, so surely they won't cause any issues going forward. Here's a look at the first 3 centers of Reformation: Hussite in Prague, Protestant in Sealy, and Protestant in Stockholm. We vassalize Brunswick by force in April of 1520. Due to our no allies rule, we'll be unable to diplo-vassalize any nation at any point in this game. In fact, just about the only peaceful expansion we're able to do happens in July, when Saxony randomly offers to sell us a province for 400 gold, which we accept. Step 3 isn't over. We're going to keep getting wrecked by the Protestant Reformation for many more years to come, but it's time to introduce step 4, vassalizing an elector. In this case, we vassalized Cologne in January of 1522. Once vassalized, there are a few ways to take the electorship from your subject. If you have very high relations with the emperor, you can ask for it, but that won't work for this run since it's hard to get to plus 200 relations without alliances. You can also buy the electorate for 6,000 gold, but our economy's not that strong yet. That leaves a third option, which we'll get to later. We end a war against Kallenberg in July of 1523, returning a core to Brunswick. This next move isn't required for the achievements, but we're going to do it anyway, declaring on some poor animist tribe in Central America. We end the war 5 months later, taking their only province and then sending a missionary at 0 maintenance to force animist rebels. While we wait for that, we keep expanding in the HRE, taking several cores back for our vassal Brandenburg. Here's an update on the Protestant Reformation. Another 2 centers have spawned, a third Protestant one in East Central Germany and the first Reformed one in Burgundy. These are forming a perimeter around the entire HRE, and due to a lack of shared borders and enemy alliances, these are not yet viable for us to take and convert. Hopefully you have better luck in your run. The Protestant Reformation is highly variable, but even if you don't, it's usually possible to recover. The second Reformed center spawns in Scotland in November of 1533, another unfortunate location. We continue expanding in the HRE, taking 3 provinces from Munster and forcing them to return to Catholicism. In July of 1535, we were able to provoke animist zealots in Central America, and 2 years later they finished the first leg of their raft trip, making landfall in North Carolina. The third and final Reformed center spawns in Switzerland, which seems historically appropriate. Here's the religious map as of June of 1538, 7 centers of Reformation ringed around the HRE. The animist zealots continue the second leg of their journey, landing in Newfoundland in April of 1539. I haven't covered the rest of Europe in much detail. You'll have to check the VODs if you want that, but I do have to point out one very strange twist. In July, Burgundy, which has been having a great game so far, keeping their French land and taking most of the Low Countries, decides to kneecap themselves in a spectacular way. They take the decision to form the Netherlands, which automatically gives all their provinces in the French region to France. This is at least 10 to 12 relatively high dev provinces worth several hundred development points. I think the AI logic on decisions is to take them whenever available, but most decisions don't cost you this badly. Here's a quick look at ideas. We drop expansion and start on diplomatic. I like going espionage first in the HRE, mostly for the aggressive expansion reduction, but there's some other good stuff in there as well. Our animist rebels finished the third and final leg of their journey, landing in Reykjavik in December of 1540. We finish another quick war, annexing Friesland. The Netherlands have already rivaled us, so we might as well take this. In February of 1542, the animist rebels in Iceland discover ancient Viking runestones and they adopt the gods of Asgard as their own. Here's an HRE wellness check, and the results are not good. 0 reforms, 0 imperial authority, minus 0.29 IA per month, and most strangely, multiple Hussite electors. We're getting strong enough to consider a run for emperor, but to do so we're going to need to get some more electors on side. This is step 5, become emperor. We start by converting one of the heretic electors, Würzburg, back to Catholicism in October of 1542. Electors are much more likely to vote for an emperor of the same religion. We're also going to keep expanding, and we annex Paderborn a day later. We're going to focus on Europe, which means abandoning our New World adventures, and we sell our Central American province back to Mosquito for a surprisingly high amount of gold. We take our first center of Reformation from Saxony in a peace deal in July of 1543, and we take an additional 2 provinces from Thuringia a year later. Here's a great power check just over 100 years into the game. We're right on the verge of breaking in, just 2 dev below Egypt. Even without religious ideas, we're able to stack enough missionary strength to remove the Protestant center of Reformation in Wittenberg. You might think we're in decent shape here. I know I did, but this game has a way of humbling you sometimes. We've been lowering autonomy and fighting rebels all game, but the internal descent hits a new level when we're forced to face 3 disasters back to back. The Peasants' War, an internal disaster, the Great Peasants' War, a negative HRE event, and religious turmoil. One of these on their own is annoying. Any event that kicks off with -6 stab isn't a great time, but all 3 back-to-back is painful. We end a war with Stettin in May of 1549, taking 2 provinces and converting them back to Catholicism. What do you do when you're ready to be emperor, but everybody likes the current one more? Well, if they're as weak as this, you can just declare war and annex them in the peace deal. We're now the Emperor of the HRE, and that's the first achievement unlocked, the Emperor's New Clothes, which only took us 111 years in-game and just under 17 hours of playtime. You can probably get this slightly faster starting as Bohemia, but your run won't be nearly as interesting. Here's a look at the HRE we've inherited, losing 0.43 Imperial authority a month with massive religious turmoil and an Elector, Bohemia, under foreign control. We've completed step 5, become Emperor, and now it's on to step 6, get attacked by stronger neighbors. This is an optional step that I would recommend skipping if you can. In our case, we get declared on by the Netherlands, who bring in the Papal State and Sweden as allies, making for an awkward 2-front war. We start outnumbered almost 2-1, particularly in the areas of cavalry and artillery, so we're forced to hire additional mercs that we can't really afford. This war has a rough start, with a loss to the Dutch army in Cologne in June. Our capital is blockaded, and we follow up our loss on land with a loss at sea in August. We managed to turn it around with a series of victories, including a stack wipe of the Swedish land forces in former Danish territory in May of 1558. We try to simplify the war by separate piecing Sweden in February, forcing them to annul their alliances with Great Britain and the PLC. This war is costing us greatly. Here we are running minus 53 gold per month. While we're tied up like this, we're unable to defend the HRE from foreign aggression like here against Hungary in August of 1561. We also have significant rebel issues. Just look at the rebel factions outlined on the right. It takes years to advance through the Dutch Maginot Line, but eventually we capture their capital and make peace in September of 1563. We take 4 provinces, war reparations, and temporarily break their alliances with Sweden and Spain. We win the war, but at great cost, massively in debt and with very little manpower remaining. We get bad news in May of 1566. Austria becomes the junior partner in a union with the Commonwealth. Between Hungary and the PLC, basically the southeastern quarter of the HRE is now under non-imperial control, contributing significantly to negative IA growth. We've just started a war against Sweden when the Evangelical Union event fires in March of 1568. Of course, as the Emperor of the HRE, we're automatically the leader of the Catholic League. The leagues fill out pretty slowly, and it actually stays internal to the HRE for a bit. That changes when Hungary, having just lost a major war with the PLC, joins our side, and the Ottomans, the most powerful nation in the game and with 3 times Hungary's troops, joins the Protestant League. I'd sure love to swap these two. We end the Swedish War in June of 1569, returning a bunch of Norwegian corps. We released them as a vassal from our North Atlantic islands a while ago, and taking 2 provinces for ourselves, including Stockholm. I wouldn't normally do this, but I want to get rid of the center of Reformation there. We expand a bit more, annexing Stettin in June of 1573. Unfortunately, we're still not strong enough to defend the empire, and we have to decline another call to arms when the PLC declares on Bohemia. We use a temporary IA bonus from our heir getting elected to usurp the Electorate from Cologne in October of 1576. This is step 7 of our master plan and good for another achievement, electable. We're still slowly expanding, and we annex Berg in September of 1581. I know I mentioned rebels and disasters before, but I want to show what this is doing to our provinces. Here's a look at the devastation map mode. For those less familiar with the game, green shows prosperity and red shows devastation. We don't have a single province with prosperity, which isn't great. We attack the Netherlands again and take 2 provinces, including Amsterdam, which will eventually be our new capital. More bad news from the religious leagues. The PLC, with one of the strongest armies in Europe, has joined the Protestant bloc. Here's a look at both sides, with the Catholic League in green and the Protestant League in blue. You might think this is relatively balanced, and on paper it is, but the reality is quite different, but we'll get to that. We push a bit further into the Low Countries with a war against Liège that finishes in August of 1597, and a year later we vassalize Bohemia. Here's another HRE wellness check, and the prognosis remains bleak. Massive negative IA growth due to a combination of a subject elector, 20 heretic princes, and worst of all, 48 provinces under the control of non-member states, which is a complete disaster. If you're curious, here's the map. The provinces with the diagonal hashes are under the control of non-member states. We go after Hungary next, taking 2 provinces and returning 2 corps to Bohemia. I know what you're thinking. Isn't Hungary in the Catholic League with you? The answer is yes, but they've been weakened so much by repeated wars against the Ottomans and PLC that their army's basically a non-factor. Speaking of Catholic League members, Russia also gets thrashed by the PLC, losing 5 provinces and forced to release 5 small tags. We finish our national ideas in February of 1607, and the text here feels appropriate for this run. The rest of the world disregards our culture as archaic and irrelevant, but we shall teach them of our peaceful ways by force. The PLC isn't content to just mess with members of our league. They force us to accept a white peace in a war we had started against the Netherlands. We get an event that I don't think I've seen before, with the Commonwealth offering us an olive branch if we remove them as a rival, which we accept. But that turns out to be just an underhanded diplomatic trick, as the PLC declares war on our vassal of Bohemia at the end of the next year. I had thought we were safe here. As leader of the Catholic League, I thought any declaration against us would call in the rest of the league, but that must not be the case when the declaration is against a vassal. I'm not going to lie, this is a tough war, and you can watch the VOD if you want the full brutal experience. We have to take out loans to hire mercs and go way over our force limit to even be competitive, and the damage this does to our economy is significant. Here's a look at the Econ tab in January of 1611, minus 163 gold per month. We also run out of manpower, and by October of 1612, we're ready for peace, giving up 2 Bohemian provinces. We lost 228,000 troops in this war, while the PLC lost 270,000. We weakened the PLC significantly. As of February of 1614, they have just 41,000 active troops with 0 manpower in reserve. The Ottomans, with 281,000 troops and rival to the PLC for 150 years, refuse to attack, which will become a theme of this run. Somehow, Iceland already leads the world in battle losses, ahead of Russia, the PLC, and the Ottomans. We beat up on the Netherlands again, taking a 100 war score peace deal in March of 1615 with the goal of keeping France or Great Britain from trying to push into the Low Countries region. We're still in massive debt with depleted armies and zero manpower when we get the surprise declaration in July. It's League War time. I'll put the raw cut of the livestream audio here since this about sums up my feelings. Oh my god. Oh. I'm going to call this step 8. Try to win the League War. And on paper, this war looks pretty balanced. If anything, we have a small numbers advantage on our side. But in reality, our Catholic League is full of paper tigers, colonizers like Spain and Portugal with all their armies in the New World, and Russia, who probably has an even worse dead economy than we do. Meanwhile, on the Protestant side, the Ottomans and PLC, the two strongest land powers in the game, and Great Britain, the strongest naval power by a mile. We start the war with some promising separate pieces, the Netherlands in November of 1615, the Palatinate in July of 1616, and Rothenburg later that year. Unfortunately, our navy just can't compete, even on an inland sea tile, and we get badly beaten off the coast of Denmark. Spain and Portugal are useless in this League War. Here's a look at North Africa and Iberia in January of 1619. Great Britain is sieging provinces, and the Iberians have just a handful of troops. I wonder if the AI is afraid to use transports due to British naval superiority or something. We keep separate piecing where we can, but so are the Protestants. Here's Hungary getting gutted again in March of 1620. It's one thing to say Spain and Portugal aren't doing anything in this war, but let's take a look at the actual casualties. As of January of 1621, we've lost the most troops so far with 157k. Tuscany and Venice are in second and third with respectable loss totals. Spain and Portugal have only lost 51k and 23k respectively. Meanwhile, the Protestant League great powers are going all out. The Ottomans have lost 271k so far, the PLC has lost 201k, and Great Britain has lost 174k. Russia separate pieces in January of 1622, losing more land to the PLC. This league war is a disaster, and the war score as of December of 1623 is minus 66%. We make a cheeky separate peace with Sweden, getting a bit of gold to save a bunch of our troops from an Ottoman doomstack in southern Finland. Our allies are getting separate peaced, from minors like Trier to fairly strong nations like Tuscany. We're pretty demoralized at this point, and we consider peace deals, even going so far as to consider making Protestantism the official faith of the HRE and thereby abdicating our emperorship. This wouldn't be a run-ender since we could flip Protestant and try to retake the emperorship, but it would be a major setback. Fortunately, we figure out a better way. The PLC and Ottomans are the core of this Protestant League, so we work out separate peace deals with them. Just giving up claims is enough for peace with the PLC, which after a war of this magnitude is kind of funny, and war reparations and releasing two small nations are enough for the Ottomans. We white peace the last serious enemy, Great Britain, in March of 1625. It takes a few more years, but eventually we end the League War in summer of 1628, somehow escaping from this disaster with a total victory and Catholicism declared the official faith of the HRE. It's ironic. Early on I thought this was going to be a small League War, but it ended up with over 3.3 million casualties and almost 1,000 ships sunk. Let's move on to step 9, which will be an ongoing one, building Imperial authority. We're short an Elector, so we make Sopmi one. We're also going to convert everybody back to Catholicism. We finish a war with the Netherlands in April of 1629, taking the rest of the Low Countries. The Netherlands have some overseas provinces, so this isn't a tag elimination. Here's a look at Imperial authority. This might not look great, but given where we were, minus 0.45 IA per month, this is major progress. Things aren't all rosy though. The PLC are annexing Austria, which would be a disaster for the HRE. If you're curious about our economy post-League War, here's a look. 22 loans totaling almost 15,000 gold. The PLC already have too many HRE provinces, and annexing Austria is unacceptable, so we declare a war against them in August of 1636. Nothing seems to come easy in this run, and this war is no exception. The PLC has a significant edge in military quality, particularly with cavalry, and even when we win battles, it's often with unfavorable loss ratios. Take this one, which goes down to the wire. We ultimately win and gain 5 war score, but at a loss ratio of 60,000 to 40,000. Here's another brutal battle, in Stettin. We lose 9 war score and over 75,000 troops, while the PLC side loses 43,000. We eventually run out of manpower and offer white peace to the PLC, which they accept in July of 1640. Total losses on our side were 326k, with 276k across the Polish bloc. We remain first in the world in battle losses, 250,000 men ahead of the PLC in second place. We need an easier target, which we find in Sweden, and we take a large chunk of land in April of 1644. The PLC has picked up enough AE to be a valid coalition target, which we join and then use in a new war, but this time automatically calling in some HRE friends. All these wars and related investment in military infrastructure have left our economy still in full embrace of modern monetary theory. Here's a look mid-war. Total debt of 18,500 gold, 41 gold per month in interest payments alone, and a monthly balance of minus 20. Still, this war goes much better than the last one, and we're able to pick off PLC stacks like this one in Kolberg. We make peace in January of 1655, forcing them to release Austria. This is a big victory for us on a couple levels. First, this is a huge amount of Imperial territory back under the control of an HRE prince, which will help significantly with Imperial authority. Second, and this may be petty, but forcing the release of a junior partner that the PLC spent decades and huge amounts of mana getting to 98% annexation feels great. Best of all, I don't think they get that mana back. Here's the Imperial authority change with this war. From 48 provinces under non-Imperial control and minus 0.18 per month to 27 provinces under non-Imperial control and minus 0.08 IA per month. Just 2 years later, with peace in the Empire, we're able to see positive IA growth for the first time since before the Reformation. Here's an update on our ideas. We finished trade in November of 1659, which has helped bring us some much-needed income. We're still light on military ideas, and we have the casualties to prove it. We finish another war against Sweden in fall of 1660, and we take all of Finland, which we immediately release as a vassal. If you're going for the assembly instructions needed achievement, you should be able to form Scandinavia here, which strangely enough doesn't require you to have a single Finnish province. In my case, I already have this achievement, so I'm going to stay as Iceland. Our naval bonuses and free colonists are just too strong to give up. 10 years later, we declare another war against the Commonwealth, but this time without our coalition. This one takes 6 years, but we're able to return quite a few provinces to Imperial control through a mix of core returns, release, and direct conquest. This brings the number of provinces under non-Imperial control to 17, and while at peace, we're making 0.1 IA per month. We finish one last war against Sweden, reducing them to an OPM and force converting them back to Catholicism. Things seem to be looking up, so the game has to humble us again, with Great Britain declaring war for Orkney in April of 1678. The British side has over 100 heavies and better naval ideas, so we're not going to have naval superiority or ticking war score the entire war, which is annoying. But what we can do is occupy British provinces on the continent and picked off doomed armies trying to land like this one. This war is a waste of time for everybody involved, and we white peace in April of 1683. I don't like the idea of not having naval superiority against Great Britain for the rest of the game, so we're going to go for naval ideas next. We research Diplotech 23, which unlocks 2 game changers for us, Wars of Imperialism and probably more importantly, client states. In normal gameplay, I don't use client states often, but this run isn't exactly normal gameplay. Switzerland left the HRE, but they have no allies, so we use imperialism to attack them and convert them back to Catholicism in the hopes that they might rejoin. Next up is France, already tied up in several wars. This one takes a little over 2 years, and we make peace in the summer of 1688, taking 6 provinces. These new provinces border the HRE but aren't in it yet, and we have a way to turn this into a bunch of Imperial authority. The way Imperial authority works in this game is kind of strange. If we add provinces to the Empire ourselves, there's no IA boost. But if another nation does so, even our subject, we get an IA boost relative to their development. You probably see where this is going. Anywhere we take land, we're going to start making client states, starting with 4 here in northern France. I recommend making them republics, since it's easier to turn them into free cities if you want. Here's a current map of the Empire. There's another key province for IA growth, and that's Prague, currently held by Austria. We make peace after a relatively short war, taking Prague for ourselves and giving a few cores back to Sealy and Bohemia. We immediately start throwing gold and manpower at the Great Project here, including taking out thousands in loans. At level 3, this Great Project will give us 0.15 IA per month, which is a really big deal. It's 1692 and we still haven't passed any reforms, but we're up to plus 0.39 IA per month, which is higher than it's been all game. Quick side note, funny peace deal here with Great Britain forcing the United States to sign white peace with the 13 colonies. We declare on the Commonwealth again, but I get overconfident here and make a huge blunder. Our forces were trapped in Prague from the last peace deal, and instead of repositioning them into our territory, I just marched them straight into the PLC. It turns out the entire Commonwealth Army was waiting for us on the Western Front, and we kick off a huge battle. Unfortunately, things go south and we're forced to retreat. However, the retreat path the game gives us isn't where I request, in northwestern Germany, but rather where we came from, towards Prague. 2 armies get stack wiped en route, and another 2 in Prague a few days later. This is over 80% of our army eliminated in the opening days of the war. Some people think that you have to be a tactical combat god to do well in this game, but I'm on a one-man mission to prove otherwise, and this might be my best work yet. In single player, there's a temptation to Alt F4 and reload at moments like this. But remember, this is all live streamed, which helps keep me honest, and we start rebuilding our military. Ultimately, we not only stabilize the front, but we actually turn this into a victory, taking a number of Imperial provinces back in a peace deal in December of 1699. The original tags in this area are long gone, so we release another tranche of 1 province client states. An extra benefit of this strategy is boosting the number of princes in the HRE, which adds a small modifier to monthly IA growth. It's been a long time coming, but it's finally time for step 10, passing reforms. I recommend you start this step earlier than 1700, but better late than never. Unfortunately, just as things start looking up, EU4 once again puts us in our place. We get called to what should be a war within the Empire. Both Dalmatia and Croatia are in the HRE, but I decline since I'd rather not fight the Ottomans. We get the dishonorable emperor penalty, costing us 10 imperial authority. I thought this penalty only came when dishonoring external attacks into the Empire, but I must be misunderstanding something. Word of our weakness must be spreading since Tuscany, which has grown into a great power, declares on an HRE prince less than 2 years later. This time we agree to defend the Empire, but this war turns into a nightmare. Tuscan army quality is significantly better than ours, and we have no way through their Alpine fort network. We're not even the war leader, which never feels great, and the war ends after 5 years with Tuscany gaining 1 province. 1710 brings the Age of Revolutions, which is going to be a whole new nightmare, starting with an immediate Commonwealth Golden Era. We do manage to sneak in a second reform here in the fall of the same year. A year later, we get another declaration of war from Great Britain, although at least this time the war goes on the continent, which will help with ticking war score. Here's a look at the great powers as of April of 1711, with the Ottomans and Great Britain as the clear top 2. Notice Great Britain has claimed the title of economic hegemon, which requires a monthly income of over 1,000 gold. While at war with the British, Tuscany attacks into the Empire a second time, and we defend again. I want to simplify this, so we make peace with the British a month later, taking the province of Calais. This loss also causes the British to lose their hegemony, which is satisfying. This Tuscan War is another nightmare. Don't be misled by the morale and discipline modifiers. Tuscany also has a bunch of infantry combat ability from quality and NO ideas. We just made peace with Great Britain, but they're back again, declaring on one of our French OPMs just 5 months after the last peace deal. I had released some of these client states to save on diplo relations, and we honor the call to arms again. We finished naval ideas, and it's time for a showdown with the British home fleet. We sail to the Straits of Dover in summer of 1716 and commence an epic 2-month naval battle. The British have a better admiral, slightly more naval morale, and the wooden wall naval doctrine bonus, but we have a higher engagement width. Great Britain has been really annoying this run, so it felt great to watch their ship numbers tick down and ultimately leave us with a stunning victory. 111 ships lost for the British and 5.7 war score gained for us. In terms of military strength, we only have the 6th largest army, but following this battle we have by far the strongest navy in the world. In October of 1717, France embraces the revolution. Initially I thought this wasn't going to be a big deal, but as usual I couldn't have been more wrong. The Tuscan War finishes 2 years later, and this peace deal is another disaster. Prague, the single most important province for this run, gets returned to Austria, and in doing so the Great Project loses a level. We were busy fighting in the west and let this get sieged down, which was another tactical mistake on my part. I reposition our troops and declare war on Austria a month later to retake Prague. They weren't in the Tuscan War, so we don't have a truce. This war takes less than a year and a half, and we take 2 provinces, including Prague. Unfortunately, Prague changing hands again means that the monument drops to level 1. We immediately take out thousands of gold worth of loans to upgrade it back to level 3 again. The British War ends in October of the same year, but these AI war leaders are driving me crazy. Instead of taking land in northern France, our helpful AI war leader forces Britain to return a couple Spanish corps, pay war reparations, and release 2 random nations. We pass our 3rd HRE reform in August of 1723, right on schedule. 10 years later, we pass the 4th reform. It might seem like we're on a good track here, but 2 things start slowing us down. First, the revolution is spreading to our free cities, which are embracing it and becoming revolutionary republics and thereby losing free city status. Also annoying is the counter-revolution modifier, which gives us severe penalties to yearly prestige, national unrest, and stability cost. We don't have the strongest army in Europe, but I'm not about to wait for the AI to handle the revolution, so we declare war in November of 1735. Of course, we barely started the war against revolutionary France when the Commonwealth attacks the eastern flank of the empire. If we were at peace, I would accept this, but we're not equipped to fight major powers on both flanks at the same time, so we're forced to decline and lose 10 IA. The Ottomans are up to 1 million troops and become military hegemon, which is great. They haven't attacked the HRE yet, but they border it, and it's probably only a matter of time. The PLC, our biggest rivals this campaign, continue to poke their finger in our eye, with another war declared into the empire in September of 1740. The French are basically defeated by now, so this time we accept the call to arms. More annoyances from this era. Notice the CB here, crush the revolution. This gives the AI minus 50 to any peace deal. In other words, this war's going to take forever and we're not even the war leader. We make peace with France in September of 1741, taking Paris and dismantling the revolution. Right on cue, the British attack into the empire again, declaring on our former French client state in November of 1743. Despite all the wars, the Commonwealth is still no pushover, and we lose multiple battles, including this one with over 136,000 casualties on our side. However, at least our navy's holding up. Here's another massive naval battle with the British side losing the better part of 200 ships, including 100 heavies. We have a tough time getting to the PLC war goal, and that war ends in September of 1745 with the Commonwealth taking one province from Sweden and a number of vassals from us, including Finland. This is even more of a setback than it looks because one of the PLC's new subjects is an HRE Elector, meaning the monthly IA penalty is back. Between this and having just 2 free cities means that we're down to almost break-even monthly IA growth. France's disaster game continues with a loss of a huge chunk of southern France to Spain. I haven't showed the New World much, but as an American I get a kick out of this rivalry between the US and Illinois. The Icelandic Revolution erupts in 1748, but is ridiculously easy to get rid of by just dumping some admin mana into boosting stability. The partition of France continues in the spring of 1749 with this Tuscan peace deal. Unfortunately, we have to decline another attack into the empire from Spain into revolutionary Lusatia, costing us another 10 IA. After almost 9 years, Great Britain finally ends their war, and this is another very special AI peace deal. Gold, war reps, the release of Normandy and Ayutthaya, and Britain ending their overlordship of Navarra. Great stuff. Despite everything we've been through, I actually consider this the low point of the run, since time is becoming a major factor and we keep getting pulled into pointless HRE defensive wars. I even debated throwing in the towel, but between streams I thought about it, and with advice from my Discord we came up with a strategy. Or rather, go back to the strategy that served us well earlier in the run, all-out offense fueled by a debt economy. This involves building conscription centers across the nation to increase force limit, upgrading all our forts to level 8, and another military expansion. It also involves another war declaration on France. Mid-war we declare a second, to expand the HRE to Venice. Here's the French peace deal. 9 provinces. You'll note we've already released Paris as a client state, and we eventually make it a free city, which is kind of fun. We end the Venetian War in May of 1755, forcing them into the empire and giving us 12.8 imperial authority. I apologize to my French viewers in advance, since this strategy essentially has us balkanizing your nation into one province minors. Still, this works to bring up imperial authority, and we pass our 5th reform in August of 1755. Thuringia has an elector as a subject, which is obviously unacceptable, and we force them to be freed in a peace deal in February of 1758. Our next war is to expand the empire a second time, this time against Normandy. Great Britain gets pulled in, but I don't mind since we'll finally be the war leader. Here's another beatdown we put on the Royal Navy. I know I've shown a few of these already, but there's something therapeutic about defeating British heavies off their own coast. We take advantage of Brittany's poor diplo to full annex them in September of 1761. We end the Norman War a month later, adding them to the empire and gaining 6.3 IA. We start releasing Breton provinces as client states, which generates enough IA for our 6th reform and the first one in the centralization branch. I want to declare on the Commonwealth again, both for payback and to retake some imperial provinces, but they're allied to Tuscany and I don't want to fight a 2-front war. Our way around this is to declare on the free city of Elector, which we do in March of 1763. We could have saved some stability and AE by revoking their free city status first, but at this point I'm treating imperial authority as our most valuable resource. We separate peaced the PLC in April of 1765, forcing them to annul their alliance with Tuscany and end their overlordship of Notek, an HRE elector. We have way more client states than we want at this point, so we intentionally lose the remaining war, offering a peace deal freeing 11 of them. In hindsight, I probably should have just kept these, since we're 2 reforms away from all our HRE subjects no longer taking up any Diplo slots, but oh well. I've skipped over a lot of the HRE micro for brevity's sake, but we've been adding Catholic-free cities and enforcing religious unity within the empire whenever possible. Releasing non-German OPM client states and then offering them free city status would allow you to get the neither Holy nor German achievement here. Depending on how Italy plays out, you may also have a chance at the Holiest Roman Empire achievement. If the papal state gets fully annexed, they have a chance to be released by an HRE theocracy, which would then let you choose them as an elector. Alternatively, you can expand the HRE south enough to bring the papal state in by force. We eject France from the continent in our next war and follow the usual strategy of client state OPMs. To show how effective this is, watch the IA increase. It's that little number on the bottom right of the screen. We start with 29, but as I unpause, it jumps up to 48, and not all of the client states have even joined yet. As we go, HRE reforms are getting tougher to pass, and it takes 64 IA to get the next centralization reform in March of 1769. This reform has an IA accelerator, and we're up to 0.52 per month. The next stop on our revenge tour is Tuscany, which has shockingly bad Diplo for a Catholic major. Even without allies, Tuscany puts up a solid fight, and we make peace after a 7.5-year war, returning several imperial provinces and releasing Switzerland. It's time for the third centralization reform, which locks imperial succession to Iceland. Then it's back to the Commonwealth with another war in November of 1778. I haven't been counting the number of wars, but the bulk of our casualties have to be against the PLC in this campaign. After we weaken the Commonwealth with a number of large battles, the Ottomans finally decide to attack their rival for the first time all game. This would have been more helpful 150 years ago, but I guess better late than never. Now the PLC are the ones facing a 2-front great power war, and they're doomed. I mean, watch the Ottoman AI move its forces around. Glad we're not fighting them, right? We make peace in June of 1785, taking 14 provinces across western Poland and forcing them to end their overlordship over 2 HRE princes. We gain 162 power projection from this war, which seems a little ridiculous, but whatever. Now I have to apologize to my Polish viewers, since the Eastern Front gets the same balkanization treatment France did. We're now trying to stack imperial authority to 100 to get as many princes on side as possible before revoking, but in keeping with the spirit of this run, the AI has one more kick in the balls left for us. We're at 98 IA, just months from revoking and getting a big power spike, and the Ottomans declare on our vassal Dalmatia. You can't pass reforms at war, so not only can we not revoke, but we're also going to waste a ton of potential IA gain while at war. We open the war with a nice naval victory in the Adriatic, but on land the Ottomans are using a pretty effective keep-away siege race strategy. We push into the Balkans and take Constantinople, but meanwhile the Ottomans siege down our Polish client states. The Ottomans have significantly better siege ability than we do, which makes trying to siege race a losing proposition. This war's pointless. We're burning time and IA growth, so we make an early peace deal offering a couple provinces and some gold for peace. It's been a while since we had a new step, so let's add one here. Step 11. Revoke the Privilegia. 62 princes support this reform, but the 7 largest do not, so this is actually going to significantly reduce the size of the HRE. Note that if you formed Scandinavia previously, you should get the Assembly Instructions Needed achievement here. On revoking, we inherit a war against Lusatia, which we end in June of 1792, returning several cores to Bohemia. I haven't really shown it, but Bavaria has exploded this game, rivaling us and then leaving the HRE when we revoked. Unfortunately, the location of the Perpetual Diet is in Ansbach, under Bavarian control, which results in a new IA penalty and is of course unacceptable. We fight a relatively quick war to liberate it, making peace in October of 1794. This next phase is going to look strange, but I wanted to get the Voltaire's Nightmare achievement, so we start releasing nations and forming client states en masse. I'll do a quick time lapse. We end up covering northern Germany with opium client states, getting us the achievement. However, it turns out the game actually has a hard cap on client states, which I discover when I try to client state the province of Stade. It lets you click the OK button, but nothing happens. Oh well, we have a backup plan, feeding client states a ton of land. In March, we intentionally break to religious rebels, changing our state religion to Norse and making us the Norse Emperor of the HRE. This isn't required for any of the HRE achievements, but it's a fun little side mission. Side note, giving away all these provinces while maintaining our military levels results in a pretty brutal month tick. minus 3,150 gold with almost 3,000 going to naval maintenance alone. Now that we're Norse, it's time to start converting our subjects. I wish there was an enforce all button, since this takes forever, but we get enough converted to pass the last centralization reform, again right on schedule, April 1st, 1799. This annexes all our subject princes, forming the Holy Roman Empire, and firing the last achievement for this run, a Kaiser not just in name. Well, there you have it, 6 or 7 HRE achievements in one run. If you really stretch, you might be able to find a faster or easier way to get some of these, but I challenge you to find a more stylish way. At the end of these runs, I like to do a quick recap of the world state and then finish with some closing thoughts. We end with a total development of around 5,000, still well behind the Ottomans, which had an absolute monster game. Take a look at their empire, which spans from Italy to India and from Ethiopia to the Arctic. As usual with my runs, Europe ends with funky borders, with Great Britain and Portugal essentially the only ones with any sense of normalcy. Africa is split into thirds, with the Ottomans, Kilwa, and Songhai each claiming a major area. Surprisingly, India still has 4 powers, with Delhi taking an unusual expansion route into China and Central Asia. The collapse of Russia led to some interesting outcomes, including what might be one of the better AI'd Zungar games I've ever seen. South America remains under the colonial yoke with the exception of Colombia, which interestingly enough has land in northern Canada and Greenland. North America is dominated by the United States, which ended up defeating Illinois in multiple wars. Here's a look at the religious map mode. Europe is still dominated by Catholicism, but you can see our Norse pockets in Scandinavia. Here's our final idea set. I went towards military ideas at the end, mostly for convenience while fighting some of the late game wars. Here's army quality. We're 4th in the world in morale, but further behind in discipline. By the way, look at Songhai here with 140%. We lead the world in naval quality, and I have to think we're responsible for the vast majority of these British naval losses. We end the game with the highest battle losses of any nation, but in terms of attrition and total losses, it's not even close. 10.6 million men lost to attrition is absurd. Here are the in-game statistics. We went 166-5 in our wars, and we eliminated 131 tags, which I think includes HRE unification, but I'm not positive. So, final thoughts while I roll the timeline. This run was a roller coaster, with some pretty extreme highs and lows. I was happy with our opening moves, but the HRE itself was a serious mess. Austria wasn't able to pass any reforms, lost the emperorship pretty early, and never got it back. The Reformation was a disaster, with the entire HRE ringed by sinners of Reformation. The fact that there was a Hussite sinner of Reformation at all, and then multiple Hussite electors, pretty much sums up how that phase of this run went. The emergence of strong rivals in every direction, Great Britain, the Commonwealth, and even Tuscany, really hurt us in the mid-game. Just when it seemed like we were picking up steam, the Age of Revolutions hit, wiping out our free cities and forcing us into really long wars in defense of the Empire, and with AI war leaders, which was horrible. Client states single-handedly saved this run, which is something that I didn't anticipate ever saying about this game, but here we are. We were able to turbocharge IA gain and pass reforms faster than I expected in the late game and ultimately complete our goal. If I could do this again, I would obviously try to get reforms done more quickly. It would have been fun to convert more of Europe to our religion and play around as a Norse superpower. This run very much had the feeling of submitting a decent but not great assignment 3 minutes before it was due. Still, I had a lot of fun with it, and I think the viewers on stream did too. I really like runs that offer interesting challenges not only at the start but also throughout the mid and late game, and this run offered that in spades. I want to close with thanks to you for watching and to my patrons and channel members for supporting the channel directly. Here's a list of those members. If you want to join, those links will be in the description. I plan to stream more EU4 content in the future, as well as EU5 and other games I find interesting. So if that's something you want to see, feel free to subscribe and join the Discord if you want. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.